It was a sweltering summer evening in Atlanta, Georgia, the kind where the humidity clings to your skin like a second layer, and the streets buzz with the energy of a city that never fully sleeps. In the heart of downtown, just a stone's throw from the iconic Centennial Olympic Park, stood Ella's Diner, a modest family-owned spot that had been serving up soul food classics for over 4 decades. The air inside was thick with the aroma of fried catfish, collard greens simmered, with smoked turkey and fresh-baked cornbread, the kind that makes you feel at home even if you're miles from your own kitchen. Patrons chatted over sweet tea, their laughter mixing with the clink of silverware and the sizzle from the open kitchen. But on this particular night, the cozy atmosphere was about to shatter like glass under a hammer's blow. Maya Johnson, a 28-year-old black woman with a warm smile that could light up the dimmest room, weaved through the crowded tables with the grace of someone who'd been doing this for years. Born and raised in the historic Sweet Auburn district, Maya grew up surrounded by the rich tapestry of Atlanta's civil rights history. Her grandmother had marched alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and stories of resilience were woven into her family's lore like threads in a quilt. Maya wasn't just a waitress. She was pursuing a law degree at night through Georgia State University, juggling shifts at the diner to pay for tuition. Her days were long, but her spirit was unbreakable, fueled by a quiet determination to fight injustice, one small act at a time. Behind the counter, Mr. Elias Thompson, the diner's longtime chef and Maya's mentor, kept a watchful eye. At 65, with salt and pepper hair and hands calloused from years over hot stoves, Elias was like a father to her. He'd taken Maya under his wing when she was just a teenager, teaching her not only how to season gumbo to perfection, but also how to stand tall in a world that often tried to push people like them down. "Bless your heart, child," he'd say with his deep southern drawl, his eyes crinkling with wisdom. "But remember, strength ain't always in the shout. Sometimes it's in the steady hand." Their bond was paternal, built on shared meals after closing and late-night talks about life's unfairness. Elias had seen his share of discrimination, growing up in the Jim Crow South, and he imparted those lessons to Maya, helping her navigate the subtle and not-so-subtle racism that still lingered in modern America. The diner was packed that evening, a mix of locals and tourists drawn in by the reputation for authentic Southern cuisine. Families shared plates of peach cobbler, businessmen loosened their ties over shrimp and grits, and a group of college students debated politics in the corner booth. Maya moved efficiently, her apron tied neatly over her uniform, her natural curls pulled back in a practical ponytail. She greeted each table with genuine hospitality, a nod to the cultural custom of Southern warmth that made strangers feel like kin. "What can I get you all started with?" she'd ask, her voice carrying the melodic lilt of Georgia inflection, always ready with a recommendation like the house special, smothered pork chops with a side of okra. As the sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows through the diner's large windows, a sleek black SUV pulled up outside. Out stepped Richard Harrington, a 52-year-old tech millionaire from Silicon Valley, in town for a high-stakes business conference at the Georgia World Congress Center. With a net worth in the hundreds of millions from his software empire, Richard was used to the world bending to his will. He strode into the diner with an air of entitlement, his expensive suit clashing with the casual vibe, his face set in a perpetual scowl. Accompanying him were 2 associates, equally polished, but visibly uncomfortable in the humble setting. They claimed a table near the window, and Maya approached with her usual poise. "Good evening, folks. Welcome to Ella's. Can I get you something to drink? Our sweet tea is homemade, best in Atlanta," Maya said, her eyes meeting Richard's, with polite confidence. He barely looked up from his phone, muttering something about the place being beneath him under his breath. His associates shifted awkwardly, but Maya kept her composure, jotting down their orders, 3 plates of the fried chicken special, extra hot sauce on the side. As she turned to head to the kitchen, Richard snapped his fingers impatiently. "Make it quick. I don't have all night for this backwater service." Maya bit back a retort, reminding herself of Elias's words about choosing battles. But as she relayed the order, she couldn't shake the feeling that this man carried the weight of privilege like a weapon. Little did she know, the evening was about to explode into a moment that would echo far beyond the diner's walls, a.e., testament to empowerment in the face of abuse and inequality. Back in the kitchen, Elias noticed Maya's tightened jaw as she clipped the order to the line. "What's got you ruffled?" "Sugar," he asked, flipping a batch of hush puppies in the fryer, his face etched with concern. Maya sighed, glancing over her shoulder at the dining room. Just another entitled customer thinking he owns the place. White guy in a fancy suit, barking orders like we're his servants. Elias nodded knowingly, his expression a mix of empathy and resolve. Aratibuski. He'd seen this too many times. Customers who let their wealth blind them to basic human decency. Keep your head high, Maya. Remember who you are. You're studying to change the system, not just survive it. His words were a balm, reinforcing their mentor-protégé bond. Elias had been there for Maya through her toughest times, like when her mother passed from illness 5 years ago, leaving her to support her younger brother. He'd even helped with her law school, applications, reading drafts late into the night. Maya nodded, drawing strength from his support. She plated the food with care, ensuring the chicken was golden and crispy. The greens seasoned just right with a hint of vinegar, a nod to traditional African-American cooking passed down through generations. Carrying the tray back, she approached Richard's table, where the conversation had turned to business deals laced with arrogant boasts. "Here you go, sir. Fried chicken special, hot sauce on the side. Enjoy," she said, setting down the plates. But as she placed Richard's dish, a small splash of sauce dotted his sleeve, an innocent accident in the bustle of service. What happened next unfolded like a storm. Richard's face contorted in rage, his eyes narrowing as he jumped up, knocking his chair back. "You incompetent idiot! Do you know how much this suit costs? More than you'll make in a year. You—" He stopped short, but the unspoken slur hung in the air, heavy and toxic. The diner fell silent, forks pausing mid-air as all eyes turned to the scene. His voice boomed, echoing off the walls. "How dare you spill on me? People like you shouldn't be working in places like this. Get me your manager, now." Maya's heart pounded, her cheeks flushing with a mix of anger and humiliation. She felt the weight of history in that moment, the centuries of inequality, the daily microaggressions black women faced in service jobs. But she remembered her studies, civil rights laws, discrimination statutes, the protections under Title VII. Elias emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron, his face stern but composed. "I'm the manager here, sir. Is there a problem?" he asked, positioning himself protectively beside Maya. Richard pointed accusingly. "This girl ruined my suit. I want her fired, and I want compensation." The tension built like a pressure cooker, customers whispering among themselves. A young black couple at a nearby table exchanged worried glances, while an older, white woman looked on with discomfort. Maya's mind raced. She could feel the eyes on her, judging, waiting. This wasn't just about a spilled sauce. It was about power, about a millionaire abusing his status to demean someone he saw as lesser. Her hands trembled slightly, but she straightened her back, channeling the strength of her ancestors who had faced far worse. In that charged silence, Maya made her decision. With a steady gaze, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, hitting record without a word. "Sir, your behavior is unacceptable and discriminatory," she said calmly, her voice clear and firm, carrying the authority of someone who knew her rights. But that was just the beginning. In one swift, deliberate move, she stepped forward and placed her hand on the table, flipping open a small notebook she always carried, for jotting case notes from her law classes. She began reading aloud from a prepared statement on workplace harassment, her words cutting through the air like a blade. Under federal law, this constitutes a hostile environment based on race. And now it's documented. The diner gasped collectively. Richard's face paled, his bluster deflating as he realized the gravity. It was that one move, pulling out the notebook and reciting the law with unshakable poise, that shocked everyone. No one expected the waitress to transform into an advocate right before their eyes. Whispers spread. Millionaire yells at black waitress. She replies with one move that shocks everyone. Elias's eyes widened with pride, a small smile breaking through his worry. The secondary characters, like the line cook peeking from the kitchen and the regular patrons, felt the shift too, the emotional weight of seeing empowerment in action. But the tension was far from over. Richard stammered, trying to regain control. "You can't do this. I'll sue this whole place." Maya didn't flinch. "Go ahead. I've got the evidence." The air crackled with intensity, the middle of the story building toward an emotional peak that would test everyone's resolve. The restaurant fell into a stunned silence as Maya's phone screen lit up the dim corner booth. Richard Harrington's face, captured in high definition, twisted in rage, his eyes bulging, veins popping on his forehead as he hurled insults. "Cat her. You think you're something special. People like you don't belong here." The video looped his words, echoing through the speakers she had turned up just enough for nearby tables to hear. Maya stood tall, her expression a mix of calm defiance and quiet fury, her dark curls framing a face that showed no fear, only resolve. Whispers rippled through the diners. A couple at the next table exchanged shocked glances, the woman covering her mouth in disbelief. The manager, Mr. Thompson, hurried over, his brow furrowed in confusion and concern. He was a middle-aged man with a kind face, originally from the south side of Chicago, much like Maya, and he had always treated his staff with respect. "Maya, what's going on here?" he asked, his voice low but firm. She handed him the phone without a word, letting the evidence speak for itself. Richard, still red-faced, tried to snatch the device, but Maya pulled it back swiftly. "Touch it, and that's assault," she said evenly, her tone steady despite the adrenaline pumping through her veins. The millionaire faltered, his usual air of entitlement cracking under the weight of exposure. He wasn't used to this, being held accountable in real time, in a place where his money couldn't immediately buy silence. As the video played on, it revealed more. Richard demanding she be fired on the spot, calling her incompetent and worse, slurs that cut deep into the fabric of America's ongoing struggle with racism. Maya had faced this before. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood in Atlanta, where her parents, immigrants from Jamaica, taught her to stand strong against prejudice. Her mother, a nurse, often shared stories of enduring similar treatment in hospitals, always responding with dignity. Now, Maya channeled that strength. The tension built as other staff members gathered. Jamal, the line cook, crossed his arms, his muscular frame a silent show of support. He was from Harlem, and he knew all too well the bite of inequality. Stories of police stops and job denials that mirrored Maya's experiences. "This ain't right, man," he muttered, loud enough for Richard to hear. The millionaire shifted, uncomfortably realizing the room was turning against him. Maya's heart raced, but her face remained composed, a slight smile playing on her lips, not of joy, but of empowerment. She remembered the protests in 2020, the Black Lives Matter, marches she had joined in downtown Atlanta, chanting for justice. This moment felt like a personal extension of that fight. "I've dealt with people like you my whole life," she said to Richard, her voice clear and unwavering. "But today, you picked the wrong waitress." Customers began pulling out their own phones, some recording the scene, others murmuring about calling the media. One woman, a local activist known for her work with civil rights groups, stood up. "This is unacceptable. We won't stand for this." Her words ignited a spark, and soon applause broke out from a few tables. Richard's face drained. Dove color, his arrogance melting into panic. But the real shock was yet to come. Maya wasn't done. She had one more move up her sleeve, something that would turn this confrontation into a catalyst for change. As the manager watched the video, his expression hardened into determination. "Richard, you need to leave. Now," he ordered, his southern drawl thick with authority. The millionaire blustered, but the tide had turned. Maya felt a surge of emotion, pride mixed with the exhaustion of constant battles. This wasn't just about her. It was about every black woman who had been belittled, every worker dismissed by the powerful. The middle of the story hung heavy with anticipation, the air thick with the promise of justice. Richard Harrington stormed toward the exit, but not before shooting Maya a venomous glare, his lips curled in a snarl of defeat. "This isn't over," he barked, slamming a fist on the table, causing silverware to clatter. The restaurant's patrons watched in a mix of horror and fascination, some shaking their heads in disapproval, Maya still holding her phone. Like a shield, met his eyes without blinking, her posture straight, exuding the quiet power that came from years of resilience. As the door swung shut behind him, the tension didn't dissipate, it evolved. Mr. Thompson pulled Maya aside, his face etched with genuine concern. "Are you okay? That was intense." She nodded, though her hands trembled slightly from the adrenaline crash. "I've been through worse, but yeah, it shook me." They stood in the back near the kitchen, where the smell of sizzling burgers and fresh fries mingled with the chatter of the staff. Jamal poked his head out, offering a thumbs up. "You handled that like a boss, Maya. Respect." Word spread quickly. By the time the dinner rush picked up, whispers turned into open conversations. A young couple at table 5, visiting from New York, approached Maya as she refilled their waters. "We saw what happened. That was brave. Mind if we share the video online? With your permission, of course." Maya's eyes widened slightly, to the flicker of hesitation crossing her features before resolve set in. "Go ahead. Maybe it'll help someone else." Little did she know that decision would amplify everything. The video, uploaded to social media with hashtags like Justice for Maya and End Abuse of Power, began to gain traction. Back in Atlanta, site where Maya had grown up attending community events at the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church, stories like hers were all too common. She thought of her father, a mechanic who fixed cars in a garage where bosses often overlooked his skills because of his accent and skin color. "Stand up, but stand smart," he always said, echoing Jamaican proverbs passed down through generations. As the night wore on, Maya's phone buzzed incessantly, messages from friends, family, and even strangers offering support. 1. Text from her best friend, Keisha, read, "Girl, you're going viral, proud of you." But amid the encouragement, doubt crept in. What if Richard retaliated? He was wealthy, connected, a tech mogul whose company dominated Silicon Valley, with ties to politicians and influencers. The power imbalance was stark, a reminder of America's deep-seated inequalities. The emotional chord deepened when Mr. Thompson sat with her during a break. He shared his own story, how he had risen from a dishwasher to manager, facing discrimination along the way. "You've got fire in you, Maya, like my mentor back in Chicago, who taught me to fight back with facts, not fists." Their conversation built a paternal bond, his guidance mirroring the support she missed from her late grandfather, who had been a civil rights marcher in the 1960s. Tension mounted as news outlets picked up the story. A local reporter called the restaurant, asking for an interview. Maya hesitated, her face showing a vulnerable mix of fear and determination, eyebrows furrowed, lips pressed tight. "Do I do this?" she asked Mr. Thompson. He nodded encouragingly. "Your voice matters. Use it." In that moment, Maya's one move, recording and standing her ground, began to shock not just the restaurant, but the nation. Comments flooded in, "This is what empowerment looks like," and "Time to hold the powerful accountable." Yet, as the story built toward its climax, challenges loomed. Richard's lawyers, public backlash, and Maya's own inner turmoil. The air hummed with intensity, emotions running high as alliances formed and battles lines were drawn. The words echoed in Maya's mind as she sat in the small office of Elena Ramirez, a civil rights attorney who'd reached out after seeing the video. Elena, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense demeanor honed from years fighting discrimination cases in Chicago's tough legal scene, leaned forward, her expression a mix of empathy and determination. "Maya, what? You took guts, but now we need to build on that. Harrington's team is already spinning this as a misunderstanding." Maya's face tightened, her brows furrowing with a blend of anger and resolve. She remembered the spit flying from his mouth, the way his words cut like knives. It wasn't a misunderstanding. He called me worthless, said I didn't belong serving people like him. Elena nodded, her eyes softening with understanding, drawing from her own experiences as a Latina woman navigating a male-dominated field. The office smelled of strong coffee and old law books, a stark contrast to the bustling diner where Maya had spent her days. As they talked, Maya opened up about her life, growing up in a modest neighborhood on Chicago's South Side, where her single mother worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on, instilling in her the value of hard work and dignity. "My mum always said, 'Stand tall even when they try to push you down,'" Maya shared, her voice steady but laced with emotion. Elena listened intently, her face showing quiet admiration. This was the start of a mentor-like bond. Helena seeing in Maya the fire she'd once had herself. Outside, the city buzzed with the story. News vans parked near the diner, reporters clamoring for interviews, Richard Harrington holed up in his luxury penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. They paced furiously, his usually composed features twisted in frustration. His PR team scrambled, issuing statements about his momentary lapse, due to stress from business deals involving massive real estate developments that often displaced low-income communities, including ones like Maya's. But the public wasn't buying it. Social media erupted with hashtags like Shark Justice for Maya and Arch End Elite Abuse, drawing parallels to real cases of workplace discrimination across America. Back in the office, Elena outlined their strategy, a lawsuit for emotional distress and defamation, backed by the video evidence. "We'll hit him where it hurts, his reputation and his wallet," Elena said, her tone firm, eyes gleaming with strategic fire. Maya's heart raced, a mix of fear and empowerment surging through her. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every black woman who'd been belittled, every worker dismissed by the powerful. As the meeting wrapped, Eleanor placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "You're not alone in this. I've got your back, like a big sister watching out for you." Maya smiled faintly, tears welling up, feeling a paternal warmth from Elena that reminded her of her late grandfather, who taught her to read the newspaper and question injustice. The tension built as word spread. Richard's lawyers threatened countersuits, claiming invasion of privacy, but Maya's supporters rallied, organizing fundraisers at local spots like Harold's Chicken Shack, where community members shared stories. Over fried chicken and mild sauce, bonding over shared struggles in the windy city. One evening, as Maya walked home through the familiar streets of Englewood, lined with corner stores and murals honoring civil rights icons like Fred Hampton, she received a call from an anonymous number. "You think you can take me down? Watch your back," a gruff voice warned. Her face paled, eyes widening in shock, but she didn't hang up. Instead, she recorded it, her hands steady despite the pounding in her chest. This was the middle of the storm, emotions intensifying as threats loomed, testing Maya's resolve. The community whispered about similar incidents, like the time a local activist faced backlash for exposing corruption, drawing real parallels to Chicago's history of fighting inequality. Maya's best friend, Jamal, a fellow server with a kind smile and protective nature, met her at her apartment, his face etched with worry. "This is getting real, Maya. But you're inspiring us all." They hugged, his embrace like a brother's book, strengthening the emotional ties that would carry her through. As night fell, Maya lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with what-ifs, the weight of the fight pressing down. But deep inside, a fire burned brighter, fueled by the knowledge that her one move had sparked a movement. The courthouse steps in downtown Chicago swarmed with protesters, signs waving high under the gray autumn sky. "No more silence," and "Empower the voiceless." Maya stood at the center, flanked by Elena and a growing circle of allies, her expression a mask of quiet strength, though her eyes betrayed the storm of nerves churning inside. Richard Harrington arrived in a sleek black SUV, his face set in a practiced scowl, surrounded by high-priced lawyers whose suits cost more than Maya's yearly rent. The media frenzy was electric. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, capturing the stark contrast between the millionaire's polished entitlement and Maya's everyday resilience. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with anticipation, the wooden benches filled with spectators from all walks of life, community, leaders and fellow waitstaff, even a few celebrities who'd voiced support online, inspired by Maya's stand against abuse of power. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and a reputation for fairness, called the session to order. Elena presented the case methodically, playing the video for the court, Richard's yells echoing off the walls, his face contorted in ugly rage, followed by Maya's calm response, her one move that shocked everyone by turning the tables. This isn't just harassment. It's a blatant display of racial and class-based abuse, Elena argued, her voice steady, drawing on precedents from real cases like the EEOC lawsuits against discriminatory employers in Illinois. Richard's team countered, painting him as a victim of cancel culture, claiming the recording was entrapment. But as witnesses took the stand, the tension mounted. A co-worker described Richard's pattern of belittling staff, her face flushing with recalled indignation. Then Maya testified, her voice clear and unwavering, describing the humiliation, the way his words echoed the microaggressions she'd faced since starting work in upscale spots where black servers were often overlooked. He yelled at me like I was nothing, but I replied with the truth, evidence that no one is above respect, she said, her eyes locking on Richard's, who shifted uncomfortably, his usual arrogance cracking under the scrutiny. Emotions peaked when Maya's mother took the stand, her face lined with years of hardship, tears streaming as she spoke of raising Maya to be strong in a city where opportunities for black families were scarce. I've seen my daughter work endless shifts, smiling through the pain, and this man tried to break her spirit. The courtroom hushed, the raw emotion hanging heavy, forging a deep connection. Eleanor squeezed Maya's hand, their mentor-protégé bond evident in the supportive glance. Outside, the protest grew, chants blending with the honks of passing cars on Michigan Avenue, referencing Chicago's rich history of labor rights, like the Haymarket affair that shaped workers' protections. Richard, sensing the tide turning, whispered furiously to his lawyers, his face reddening with frustration. In a break, he approached Maya in the hallway, his expression a forced calm. This can end now. I'll settle quietly. But Maya, bolstered by her growing support network, shook her head, her lips curving in a defiant smile. No. People need to see what happens when you stand up. The exchange crackled with intensity, a pivotal moment where power dynamics shifted. Back in session, more evidence poured in. Texts from Richard's associates revealing a culture of entitlement, including offhand remarks about those people in service roles. The emotional weight built as Jamal testified, his voice breaking, as he described Maya's kindness, how she'd mentored younger staff, acting like a big sister in the chaotic diner world. She's family to us, and what he did hurt all of us. Tears welled in Maya's eyes, the paternal connections in her life, from her grandfather's lessons to Elena's guidance, reinforcing her strength. As the day ended, the judge adjourned. But the story's middle crescendoed with a leaked audio of Richard's threat to Maya. Amplifying the outrage, social media exploded anew, with users sharing personal stories of inequality, from wage theft in fast food joints to racial profiling in high-end establishments. Maya returned home exhausted but empowered, cooking a simple meal of collard greens and cornbread, a nod to her southern roots transplanted to the Midwest, sharing it with Jamal and her mum, their laughter a brief respite amid the storm. Yet, as she scrolled through messages of support, including one from a young girl saying, "You showed me I can fight back," Maya's resolve hardened. The climax approached, with the trial's outcome hanging in the balance, emotions at their peak, and the world watching to see if justice would prevail against unchecked power. Millionaire yells at Black Waitress. She replies with one move that shocks everyone. The courtroom in downtown Atlanta buzzed with anticipation as the trial against Richard Howard began. Maya Thompson sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands steady despite the knot in her stomach. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and fresh coffee from the nearby vendors, reminders of everyday life amid this high-stakes battle. Outside, supporters gathered, holding signs that read "Justice for Maya" and chanting slogans against inequality. Richard, dressed in a tailored suit that screamed old money, smirked from across the room, his lawyers whispering strategies born from years of dodging accountability. The judge, a stern woman with graying hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, called the court to order. Maya's attorney, Elena Ramirez, a fierce Latina advocate known for taking on corporate giants, stood up first. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice steady and commanding. "This case isn't just about one incident in a fancy restaurant. It's about the systemic abuse of power that people like my client face every day. Maya Thompson, a hard-working waitress from Atlanta's West End, was humiliated, berated, and physically threatened by a man who thinks his wealth puts him above decency." Maya's eyes met those of her mentor, Mr. Jenkins, who sat in the front row. The old man, with his weathered face and kind eyes, had been like a father to her since she started at the diner years ago. He nodded subtly, his expression a mix of pride and worry. Pride in how far she'd come from the girl who fled a tough upbringing in rural Georgia, worry for the emotional toll this was taking. Maya remembered their late-night talks over plates of peach cobbler, a staple in southern kitchens, where he'd share stories of the civil rights era, teaching her that strength came from within, not from money or status. As the trial unfolded, witnesses took the stand. First, the young busboy, Jamal, a college kid from the neighborhood, recounted the scene with wide-eyed intensity. "I saw Mr. Howard grab her arm," he said, his voice trembling slightly, face flushed with the memory. She didn't back down. She pulled out her phone and started recording. It was like watching someone stand up to a storm. The jury leaned in, their faces showing a range of emotions, some nodding in empathy, others furrowing brows in thought. Then came the video expert, who confirmed the footage was unaltered, capturing every slur and threat. Richard's team tried to spin it, claiming he was under stress from a bad business deal, but Elena dismantled their arguments with sharp precision. "Stress doesn't excuse racism or assault," she fired back, her eyes locking onto Richard's, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his usual arrogance cracking like thin ice. Maya's turn on the stand was the emotional core. She walked up with poise, her simple blouse and skirt a stark contrast to the opulence around her. The prosecutor grilled her, but she held firm. "Why didn't you just apologize and move on?" he asked, sneering. Maya's face hardened, a flash of determination in her eyes. "Because I've spent my life moving on from people like him," she replied, her voice clear and unwavering. "From the bosses who overlooked me, the customers who tipped less because of my skin. That day I chose to stand up, not just for me, but for every black woman who's been told to stay silent." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Drawing strength from the cultural roots that grounded her, memories of family gatherings with soul food like collard greens and cornbread, where stories of resilience were passed down like heirlooms. The courtroom fell silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy. Even some of Richard's supporters looked uneasy, their faces softening with reluctant empathy. Secondary characters added depth to the narrative. Sarah, Maya's best friend and fellow waitress, testified next, her voice choked with emotion. "Maya's not just strong, she's kind," she said, wiping her eyes. "She's mentored me through tough times, like a big sister. This incident broke something in her, but it's also rebuilding her fiercer." Sarah's testimony highlighted the ripple effects, showing how one act of defiance inspired those around Maya, fostering bonds that felt paternal and supportive. The tension peaked during closing arguments. Richard took the stand briefly, his face red with feigned remorse. "I lost my temper," he admitted grudgingly. "But it was a misunderstanding." Elena pounced. "A misunderstanding," she echoed, pacing dramatically. "You yelled slurs, grabbed her, that's abuse of power, plain and simple. The jury needs to send a message that no amount of money excuses this." Deliberations were swift, the jury returning after just 2 hours. The foreperson, a middle-aged black man with a thoughtful expression, read the verdict. We find the defendant, Richard Howard, guilty of assault and emotional distress, damages awarded, $500,000. Gasps echoed through the room. Richard's face, crumpled in shock, his empire's facade shattering. Maya exhaled deeply, tears finally streaming down her cheeks, not from pain but from vindication. Outside the courthouse, under the Georgia sun, Maya hugged Mr. Jenkins tightly. "You did it, kid," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion though eyes misty. "You've made us all proud." Supporters cheered, media swarmed, but Maya focused on the faces of young girls in the crowd, their eyes wide with hope. The settlement funded community programs in Atlanta's underserved areas, teaching empowerment workshops inspired by her story. In the months that followed, Maya returned to work, but transformed. She started a mentorship program at the diner, guiding young staff through life's challenges, much like Mr. Jenkins had done for her. Richard faded from the spotlight, his reputation tarnished, a cautionary tale of unchecked privilege. Maya, however, rose, speaking at events, her one move with the phone sparking a movement against inequality. As she sat on her porch, one evening sipping sweet tea, a southern tradition, watching the sunset over the city skyline, Maya reflected on the journey. It wasn't just about winning, it was about reclaiming power, building connections, and proving that one voice could shock the world into change. The end came not with fanfare, but with quiet strength, a testament to resilience in the face of adversity.